So J.K. Rowling is now represented by a trans MSP in Parliament. So the community in which she lives is obviously not marching to the beat of her drum. I'm not really sure to what extent J.K. Rowling is actually integrated into her local community. I would imagine that her level of fame has led her to live quite an isolated lifestyle. And of course, local community integration is not a given these days. I often wonder where J.K. Rowling would fall on the socio-political spectrum if she wasn't as famous as she is. Remember that when this all started and she wrote that open letter, whilst the letter was manipulative and tone-deaf, she was undoubtedly a lot milder on the topic back then than she is now. I happen to know a self-described transsexual woman who's older than I am and wonderful. Although she's open about her past as a gay man, I've always found it hard to think of her as anything other than a woman, and I believe, and certainly hope, she's completely happy to have transitioned. It's very hard to imagine her saying anything like this in 2026. She didn't put much in that letter that was particularly out of step with what a lot of women her age I know were feeling and thinking at the time. The difference, of course, is that she is a person of immense influence and power, and so the danger of what she was saying was felt very keenly, and thus a huge backlash began. And, perhaps in part due to the emotional experience of that backlash, her views have since become more and more extreme. Most of the people I know who were defensive of her around the time of the letter are now in agreement that she has rather lost grip on reality and seems to spend a lot of her time being a spiteful bully. Some say power corrupts, others say power reveals. I would say that both are true, and I might also add that power infects. There are a lot of people out there who, when push comes to shove, are pretty transphobic, but they also spend very little of their time thinking about trans people, and so there isn't much opportunity for them to become consumed with hatred and fear. But with fame and power, especially the beloved national treasure brand of fame and power that Rowling was in receipt of, comes the fear of losing it. And so when I say power infects, I mean that I think the fear of losing that power grips a soul so tightly it becomes almost like a disease of the mind and makes people act incredibly irrationally. I'm fairly sure if you told Rowling from 20 years ago about some of the conservative and far-right company she very publicly keeps these days, she wouldn't believe you. While obviously you don't need to be famous to become violently transphobic, when I look at the journey that Rowling has been on, I picture another timeline where there's no Harry Potter, she's living a regular life, and she tells her adult children and her younger colleagues that she doesn't really get the whole transgender thing, and then just moves on to think about other things.